neighborhood and of its people who did not want to go.
I don't want no money. I want my home. The old man is old. See how the old man is old? No more. That's enough. I don't want to get out. I sent my two daughters. They don't want to get out because they spend a lot of money. Plenty of money they spend in this place. We not get none for nobody. Never.
Hi, welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. Tonight we have an old friend back again. I think we did a show about 4 months ago, right?
Yeah.
And I have Ray Flynn back, and we're going to talk about eminent domain. We're going to talk about neighborhoods. We're going to talk about the way things were, politics the way it was, and politics the way it is now, and be a little different show, and we'll just wrap a little bit.
Matter of fact, I think the last time I was here, I just came back from Rome.
Yeah. That's right, the Pope.
I was there 9 weeks covering the both the funeral, the death, the funeral, the conclave of Benedict XVI. I was there 9 weeks. I was working for NBC on 2, 3, 4 times every day. A fascinating experience. It was good to get back to Rome. I had an opportunity to again travel throughout the country and really learn about a lot of different issues.
Now we had a Polish Pope, and now we have a German Pope, and it seems strange, to have a German Pope because everybody knocked all the different ethnic groups, okay, and they were Italians for so many years, and German, nobody ever thought of German, would be a Pope, but I understand he's a pretty nice guy anyway.
It's kind of interesting, Jim, because of the fact that we both grew up in neighborhoods, West End, South Boston, but it could be any neighborhood of Boston, North End, Roxbury, where there was such an ethnic presence there, Irish, Italian, Polish, German, Jewish, and we all got to know each other, and we got to know the culture and the traditions and the history. We had a little bit of an understanding of the various backgrounds of people. So in many respects, if you live in Italy, as I did for almost 5 years, you know the Italian culture. If you live in Lithuania, as I visited on a number of occasions, you know the Lithuanian culture. But when you live in places like the West End, or South Boston, or Roxbury, you know everybody's culture. That's the way it is. It's like little UN. So it was fun to see how all the German people came into Rome for the elevation of Benedict XVI, and then as the Polish people did for John Paul II.
John Paul, and well, that all changes. Religion changes, politics change, the world changes, and I guess you have no control over that. You just live with it and take what comes, and hopefully it's better when the changes come and mix together. We have the eminent domain decision too that came down. That's just recently. And there's a lot of people that forgot that the West End was one of the first eminent domain projects, and that they tore it down, and it became a landmark. Gans wrote the book, Urban Villages, okay, and the West End was the first place that term was ever used, urban villages or urban village. That was coined for the West End. And now everybody's concerned about eminent domain and urban renewal because they've gone so far over the line. They went from public use to public purpose to public benefit. So it's now they can take your house, put a Walmart's for extra taxes. It may be salty, they may be taken next.
But here we are. We have the United States Supreme Court coming in, giving more power to city governments to basically do what they did in Boston in the West End, which was a colossal mistake. And but Jim, what they did with the bulldozer in the West End, they're doing it to the neighborhoods of Boston now
with a pencil.
Big developers and money
with a pencil,
and buying up all the land and converting all these homes, 3-decker homes that we grew up in, and making 6 condominiums out of them. I mean, my neighborhood, South Boston, literally has been turned upside down because of the influx of young professional people. It's not the same town. And politics, as you mentioned, Jim, is not the same town.
Oh, totally different.
It's money
Totally
that runs City Hall. It's money that controls political elections. And the people, as a result of it, get so turned off, they don't even vote anymore.
Well, a lot of these people don't vote because they're just not interested. As long as their belly's full and they have diversions, they don't even bother. They say, well, somebody will own it. You know, and that's their idea of the way it is. Davis Square, the same thing. When I moved into Davis Square, it was a working class neighborhood. I mean, it was a blue collar neighborhood. People had kids were all over the place. Matter of fact, in those days, kids were a lot of the problem because they would run over your hedges and do all, you know what I mean? But it was a neighborhood. You know what I mean? Now it's pretty much, you know, like you say, well, for the term, it's become a yuppie neighborhood. It's
You know, the other thing on the politics aspect of it, my son Eddie, as you know, Eddie's running for city councilor at large in Boston. And, you know, I ran for city councilor in Boston for a number of years. I could literally run a good, strong campaign. I finished first all across the city, and I spent very, very little money. What I did was I worked hard. I was out there knocking on doors, going to civic meetings, you know, meeting people at the Veterans Post, the Italian-American Post, the Jewish Post, whatever it would be. But now Eddie says some of these candidates, some of these city councils have $400,000 or $500,000 for a campaign. Where are they getting their money? They're getting their money from developers, and the developers will have them in their pocket, so the poor people don't even have a voice. It's because they're obligated and they're owned. These politicians are obligated and owned by these developers. So really, you know, when you say politics has changed, yeah, it certainly has. Not necessarily for the better, of course.
Politicians nowadays, they realize all they need is money and interest groups, and they'll get elected that way, and they'll just go ahead and they forget about whoever's in the neighborhood. And what happens, the neighborhoods are slowly dissolving as far as working class people are going, blue collar working class people, and the new people don't really care about what happened, don't care. You have a lot of them talking about, in the old days, if you said, I'll raise taxes, you had 8 million people at City Hall banging on your door.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of them that are going, oh, I don't mind if they raise taxes if I get better services. You know?
My son Eddie's trying to do something that I think is kind of a interesting dynamic. He's trying to organize veterans in the city. Now, we haven't seen veterans involved in politics in a long, long time. Do you remember the signs down the old West End, or the North End, or Roxbury, or South Boston, or Dorchester, Somerville, Cambridge, you know, veteran, and then Democrat. On the sign, you'd see the signs on the house. My son Eddie is the only veteran running for public office in Boston, and he's got the sign on it, veteran.
His son would make a great city councilor because he's a nice, humble kid, and he tries to do what's right. Okay? Well, and that means a lot as a politician. That doesn't mean a lot to the voters because they tend to vote for whatever the soundbite gives them. But your son, right, if he becomes elected, right, will make a great city councilor because he has that ability. He wants to listen to people and he wants to do the right thing. And I like him a lot. I'm not saying that because he's just saying that. I like Eddie.
I'm surprised actually that he decided to get into politics because he's been in the military. 4 days after he graduated from Don Bosco High School, he joined the Navy. So then he went on to college. But you know, different kind of development politically than I did.
That's right.
You know, I was college All-American and then professional basketball player and then got into politics.
Became a rep.
And a rep and a city councilor and then mayor. Eddie spent his career in the military, and he's a Boston public school teacher, so it's kind of a different course of getting into politics.
Like I say, he's a good kid. I like him. He came to the West End Mass one time, and he just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And, you know.
I think he probably heard, you know, it's like a lot of young people, they hear their mothers and fathers talking about the old days, and they probably like it, you know, and the old West End, St. Joseph's Church, and, you know, and all that.
And that affected me a lot. I said, you know, just, you know, he really doesn't have to be here. He's here because he has some kind of interest. And a person like that, okay, that has that kind of mentality, okay, I think would make a good politician because he's not looking for what somebody did for him that he's got to repay, but what he thinks that, you know, is the right thing, or what may be interesting, or what may be good, you know? And that's what got me about him.
He says a little recollection of what it was, what it was once like, and, you know, and you want to protect that historic character of Boston's neighborhoods. I'm afraid, Jim, we're losing a lot of that character.
Most of it's gone. And eventually Roxbury, instead of being Irish, became largely black.
When I get cut by the Boston Celtics, the job that I got was a probation officer.
That's right.
And the area that I had was Old Ward 14, Blue Hill Avenue, the G&G restaurant, the Jewish area, all Jewish area. And it was just a remarkable area. I mean, I literally loved the neighborhood, and I knew everybody in the neighborhood. But then again, not the bulldozers, but the redlining. You remember that? The real estate developers came in. I mean, it's always the powerful and the wealthy that destroy peoples in family and neighborhoods.
What's his name? The head of the BRA at that time.
Logue?
No, the other guy. Kane Simonian.
Oh, Simonian.
Kane Simonian. He was the, whatever you call it, the executive secretary. They did an interview with him, and what he said was, well, we had three choices. We could either do the West End, the South End, or Mattapan. And I couldn't understand that, because Mattapan, at that time, was like a West Roxbury type neighborhood. Yeah, it was so beautiful. I was working at that time in a clothing factory. I was fixed machines and everything. And I was talking to this couple that had, Jewish couple that had this house out there in Mattapan. And they couldn't understand, you know, the house was a beautiful neighborhood, and all of a sudden that the prices were going down and they had to move out.
Well, what they did was the city then manipulated the whole thing. They created, they were putting out flyers, the blacks are moving in, crime is going to go up.
Skywriting, yeah.
There was fires.
Right.
You know, it's like what they did over Symphony Hall. You know, the same thing, the arsonists came in, and these poor Jewish people, a lot of them escaped the Holocaust. That's how I got to know all of them. I love them. And they had their nice little homes. They raised their children there in Mattapan. The synagogues were there, the meat markets, the kosher meat markets, the G&G restaurants, and all these different delis.
The West End, that West End place ever got, if it was ever done the way it should have got done, like with mainly West End people and everything, I always wanted to have an old-time rally outside. You know, that big thing, you know, put up the stands again.
The lights.
Have everybody come in. And
happy days are here again. That would be fun, and invite back all the old politicians.
What's missing in politics now is the color.
There's no fun.
They used to come up the street. They'd go up the street, right? They'd right up the street, and they'd have flares sticking out. Two guys hanging on each side of the cars with flares in their hands, and everybody, you know, beeping their horns and going. Now you did that with all the cops.
I have two sons. My son Eddie, you know, that's the one that's running for city council. I have another son, Ray, who's who loves politics. And Ray, I didn't have a car when I was running for public office for the longest period of time, and so I'm down the North End this one night, and there's a rally in the North End. Ray was like around 7 years old at the time, so I had to go from the North End to Beacon Hill. There was a rally up there as well. So Freddie Langone is talking to the people in Italian, you know, vote for me, Freddie Langone, you know, the whole thing. He's giving that pronunciation of his Italian dialect very proudly. He's doing this. And then I said, Freddie, can you give us a ride up to Beacon Hill? He says, oh, sure. So we get in the car with Tony Taro, who was the photographer for Freddie. And he was a photographer for the city. They drive us up. Imagine driving your opponent to the rally, you know. So we get up there, and Freddie Langone spoke in this most eloquent way. And he says, please vote for me. Attorney Frederick C. Langone, one of the top students from Boston University Law School. And on our way home, my son Ray, who was 6 or 7 years old at the time, he said to me, Dad, how come when Mr. Langone was talking down the North End, he talked one way, but then when he was up at Beacon Hill, he talked another way? And I says, Ray, that's called Boston politics.
You remember when Umana was running, I forgot the name of the other, he was a representative from East Boston.
Mario Umana.
And the representative was running against him.
It was Budalieri?
No, I forgot. Anyways, and he got up there, he was very eloquent.
It was Di Lorenzo.
No, it wasn't Di Lorenzo. And he was speaking right, and after he gets through, Umana gets up there and he goes, He goes, I'm the Harvard graduate. He's the guy that speaks like, he speaks like a Harvard graduate. I'm the Harvard graduate.
Might have been DeVolio, Mikey DeVolio. Yeah, I mean, you know Mike DeVolio and Jerry DeVolio. I mean, you go through these, well, Somerville here, I mean, we're in Somerville today, but...
Somerville's been, this world has changed.
You talk about change.
Yeah.
I mean, you just had that Senate election over here. I mean, you had, you had the Brennan machine here, and the Havigans, and Piros, and all the...
And part of, Tip O'Neill had a piece of this place for a while, the down by Cambridge, Ward 2 type.
But you'd see these guys. These guys were real. I mean, I was a kid, and I used to see Jim Curley, James Michael Curley, John Powers, the Senate president. They were all wonderful, wonderful politicians.
And LeMasney, he had the Hendricks Club.
Yeah.
And what happened is, if you moved into the West End, for 50 cents he gave you a key to the Hendricks Club. And all that meant was that he intended you to vote, as long as you voted for him. If you needed a job, you needed a coal for your fire, you went to see LeMasney, LeMasney took care of it.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you did the wrong thing, you'd never get anything from it. All we used to do is, they would get the ballot, right? You'd open it up, and they'd give everybody hard lead pencils. So when you marked the thing and you closed the ballot, if the mark was in the wrong place on the back,
well, for the rest of the time. One old timer told me the difference between politics then and now is then, if you didn't do anything if you didn't support the candidate, the candidate wouldn't do anything for you if they won, like you said. The difference now is they won't do anything for you even if you supported them.
Right. So it was different. The guy Shannon that died, Charlie Shannon.
Charlie Shannon.
It's a kick back to the old days. I got to tell you, I helped him. I even helped him when he was a Republican, sad to say. But he was a great guy, and I helped him, and he never forgot it. If you called his office, and he'd call you back and say, Jim, what's wrong?
I don't know why they don't measure politicians anymore on the basis of being accessible, being open, delivering services. I mean, I've got this same, every hot day, the sewer, it smells down the street from my house. My wife says, I'm going to call up the city of Boston again. I said, Kathy, how many times have you called up the city for this same sewer? It just doesn't get cleaned. I mean, now if this happens in the same street where the former mayor lives, can you imagine the poor ladies up the street? They have no chance at all of getting their sewer cleaned or their light fixed. It's all paid political commercials. It's all about money. It's all about developers. It's all about powerful special interests. It's not about people anymore. You just don't have that. Politicians no longer are out there in the streets. And I used to get criticized, as you well know. I'd get criticized for riding the snow plows, and I'd get criticized for being out there all the time. And then I came up with a statement, look, you can't run the city from City Hall. You have to be out in the neighborhood. You have to be talking with people. I'm out there now helping my son Eddie, city councilor, and I was in Roxbury the other night. And I mean, my God, it was like MacArthur going back to the Philippines. The people in Roxbury love to see me because they knew that I gave them the best chance to improve their life.
You had one of the best BRA directors. Everybody I think concedes that, is that Coyle was...
Steve Coyle.
Was one of the best, or the best.
Yeah, by far, yeah.
And do you remember when the Dudley Square Initiative?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have never got done. As far as I know, they're the only non-public entity that has urban renewal, eminent domain powers.
Yeah, we gave that property to them, and we got criticized for it. I remember doing the same thing when Mother Teresa, for Mother Teresa, when she wanted to build housing for mothers with unwed mothers with babies, with their children. I turned that property over in Dorchester to Mother Teresa in her order. And I wrote about it in my book, and the Globe was criticizing it, the Herald was criticizing it, but what happened? You had 3 houses. They had like 14 or 15 kids that were able to live a healthy, productive life in a nice safe housing in a good neighborhood. give the people the power. Don't try to keep the power at City Hall. Let the people make those decisions. That's why this eminent domain decision, Jim, that you talked about by the Supreme Court, it does just the opposite. What it does, it takes power away from the people and puts it in the hands of City Hall. The last thing you want to do.
I was thinking about it, and I said, why? It was all the, the liberal members of the court voted against this. I said, why? And then it dawned on me, the only thing I can think of, the only thing that even comes to my mind is that, liberals usually are interested in increasing taxes. So by, letting people take your house and giving it to a Walmart and increasing your taxes, maybe that's what they were thinking. I just can't fight for the life of me. I can't.
I thought what it was that they, I get the impression that they think they know what's best for you and what's best for people and how to live their lives, rather than let people keep the money in their pocket, let the people decide how they're going to spend it. They want to go out and they want to buy their grandson or granddaughter a little suit or a little outfit down in Walmart's or down the store. Let them do it. Don't decide for them. Don't have City Hall deciding for families out there, how their dollars, their tax dollars should be spent.
Well, with tax dollars going up like now in some
it's incredible. Real estate property taxes are incredible.
I have about 4 or 5 friends that, are over 65, and they're on fixed incomes.
Yeah.
And they have to sell their houses to get out because they can't afford the tax.
I don't know why there is not an outrage, why there isn't more anger in Boston and Somerville and Cambridge and Malden, these areas, because of the high growing real estate property tax. I just don't understand it. As you say, people on fixed income. My son is working with veterans and he's trying to come up with some kind of deal so these veterans who served our country so well, they don't get forced out of their house. What they're doing is they're trying to force them into nursing homes or public housing.
Oh, is that right?
These people should be allowed the dignity of living in the house in which when they came back from the Second World War, Korea, they could live in dignity.
As you know, we finally got the
Memorial.
Western Memorial. Well, they didn't do it yet, but they've agreed to it. And all those people, all those people that fought that Second World War. My brother died in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And
your brother was in Anzio?
No, he was
in Sicily.
He came in. He was all the way from the boot all the way up. Some other outfits came in from Anzio.
So he came in from North Africa.
He went through Casino. No, he came in from North Africa.
And then they from
well, he wasn't actually in North Africa. His division, the 88th Division, landed just after, Sicily.
Yeah.
And they fought all the way.
I visited all those cemeteries, all those monument cemeteries. They're beautiful.
He was wounded 3 times.
3 times.
Well, the 3rd time he died. But he fought all the way up through Casino, all the way up to the Po Valley.
Cassino, that was the very famous battle there. It's this huge hill there. Incredible number of Polish resistance Americans died, trying to get up that hill. Was occupied by the German forces.
Well, that's why Anzio was to go around that block.
Yeah.
That's why they did Anzio.
Nettuno and Anzio. Then once you cleared Monte Cassino, then there was a straight march into Rome, the liberation of Rome. And then, of course, the Normandy was next.
Up into the Po Valley. And my brother was in October 21st, 44. They were coming back off the line, and some guy stepped on a landmine, took them both out. So it was...
an incredible experience my son Eddie had was he was on the USS Sullivan's, the ship.
That's right.
The famous 5 boys that died from Waterloo, Iowa. And Eddie was the information officer as the ship went into England and went into Ireland with the Sullivan family. And all the people from Ireland greeted the USS Sullivan ship as it came in, Navy ship. He said it was one of the most extraordinary experiences that, some people at County Cork in Ireland knew all about the Sullivans, the 5 boys who got killed on the USS Juno, sunk by a Japanese tornado. But to actually see the
it was a shame because they were under radio silence and they couldn't go back to pick them up. The commander, that was off of, was that Guadalcanal? Was it Guadalcanal? Yeah, I think it was Guadalcanal.
The Second World War there.
Yeah, they were
I think they were eaten by the sharks, right?
Yeah, what they did is they just, they said they couldn't go back because they had what most people don't realize, we took a beating, the Navy took a beating in that battle.
Yeah.
They never said it till like afterwards, but they wouldn't open radio contact because they were scared that the Japanese would find them. And
we had a boy from South Boston, Martin McDonough Post, which I hope the Post, maintains itself. He was on the USS Juneau. He went down on the on that ship as well. That was a tragic situation. I guess they changed the law after that. You can't have more than one brother,
if you are the last remaining male heir, you can't be drafted.
I assume everybody's seen that movie, the Fighting Sullivans.
I don't know, because that was, so long ago. I know everybody of my generation did.
It's an incredible movie. Remember the police, the officer showing up at her home, farmhouse in Waterloo, Iowa, and she says, how many died? Which one died? And the priest and the officer, the Navy officer said, all 5 of them. Can you imagine what a mother would, you had one. A brother. Can you imagine a mother hearing the news of 5 sons getting killed? Incredible.
Yeah. That was a long time ago, and a lot of people, a lot of people died in that war.
Yeah. Well, look what's happening now. Even with the war in Iraq, my son Eddie was in the Persian Gulf.
Right.
And and all the hardship and the heartache that. Parents right now in Boston and Massachusetts, their sons and daughters in the reserves going off to Afghanistan.
Well, I think
Iraq.
the reserve shouldn't have took the brunt on this. And see, I think that they should have those Humvees and everything should have been honored.
Steel plated.
Yeah, there's a whole host of things I disagree on them, but. Hopefully we can get out of there quicker, as fast as we can. But on the other hand, you're talking about, we're not taking enormous casualties. Now, one isn't enormous if it's your family. But, in a military...
I think the situation is going to get worse, though. I really don't think it's going to get a heck of a lot better for a while. I mean, there's this notion... I was in Mogadishu in Somalia right after the situation there. The Black Hawk Down, and I was there as a United States ambassador. And the notion was that if you put pressure on the United States government, they'll fold and they'll leave.
Well, it's true, they did.
And I think this is what's happening in Iraq. They think if you can create more havoc and more turmoil, the United States will withdraw their troops.
Well, we can't afford to take the kind of casualties that it would take to win this war, okay? Politically, you can't afford to do that.
We lost 57,000 in Vietnam, and you don't want to repeat that.
I think we have, what, 1,800 now?
Yeah, I think we're almost 2,000,
1,800.
And it seems like the situation is getting worse and worse with these car bombings and bus bombings and all that,
Well, we're getting close to the end
We
of
could
this.
talk all night.
Sure we can.
It's always great to be with you, Jim. Thank you. Thank you.
It's always glad to have you. I would have liked to have your son too here, but I guess
You'll come back as a city councilor.
I hope so.
I hope so.
I hope so, because like I told you, I like him. He's a great kid.
Thanks.
Yeah, and
We're very proud of him.
I guess I'll see you at the next video, West End.
of sight, out of mind. You'll find someone new, but I can't change my love the way that you do.
This is the story of a lost neighborhood and of its people who did not want to go.
I don't want no money. I want my home. The old man is old. See how the old man is old? And I'm old. That's enough. I don't want to get out. I sent my two daughters. They don't want to get out because they spend a lot of money. Plenty of money they spend in this place. We not get none for nobody. Never.
Hi, welcome to the West End Video Newsletter. The show today, I guess we've done like 2 or 3 shows in the past about West End veterans and the taking down of the memorials in the West End, and that the city never did anything about them and putting them back. But October 21st, 2005, the city found, which is strange because my brother Frank died in the Second World War on October 21st, 1944, and they put back the memorial to the West End veterans on October 21st, 2005. So it was like sort of a little bit of a strange coincidence to me, right? That on the day my brother died, that they rededicated West End veterans. He died in Italy in 1944, October 21st. The city finally decided, we did a show back a little bit ago about West End veterans in the city. Matter of fact, we did 2 shows before that. One which was, we were complaining that the city hadn't done anything. We did that with Jimmy Noel and Joe Anello, Joe Anello won a Silver Star. He was a very prominent West End veteran because he was captured he won the Silver Star. He was captured by the Chinese communists, escaped, came all the way down through North Korea and ended up back in American lines. And it's a great story. I mean, they've done pieces on him and everything. He's a West End hero, I guess you'd call him. But anyways, be that as may. Then we did another one, complaining again last April. And what happened was that the next month, the city finally decided to rededicate a West End memorial for West End veterans who had died in the Second World War and in the First World War, and all of them. So they put up that plaque again. We did the second show, right? We did 2 in a row because the second one was we had to say something that they had decided to do that, and we were complaining all these years, and then we decided to do it again. Okay, so we had to say that they were doing the right thing, and now I'm doing this one again. This is October of 2005, and because they finally did it. Menino came down and dedicated. Tom Materazzo, who was on the show back then, was there. They had a color guard. They had a whole bunch of people. Then we went over to the West End Museum, and we went in there, and there was a whole bunch of veteran organizations. I forgot all their names, but it was a real good day. The city supplied refreshments inside the museum, and we had West End people there, and we had city people, and we had veterans groups. Everybody had a good time. We had coffee and cold cuts, and it was amazing. It was really a good time, and we spent 20 years waiting for it to come back. 20 years. I've been fighting 20 years. We waited 40 years for this to come back, and. But we're going to run some of the tapes that we did from the prior shows with Jimmy Murray and Tom Materazzo. So here we go. Extension of the last show we did. The last show we did, we were talking about why the city should put the veterans' monuments and signs back, because it's a shame. It's been 40 years and something. Just after we did the show and we had them out, the mayor of Boston said that he is going to replace the sign. So this show has to go on because we have to, I really have to say this, I congratulate the mayor for doing what was right, and it's a happy show because for the first time in, I don't know, in my whole life that we've gotten to this point. I've been fighting this war for like 20 years, and I'm really glad and I'm happy. And tonight we have with us, we have Tom Materazzo, Ralph Silvestro, and Jim Noe. Jim Noe and Ralph Silvestro are veterans from the Korean War, and we'll be talking to them a little bit. And we're going to be talking to Tom because Tom is with the Veteran Services of Boston, and we're going to discuss a little bit about what's going to happen with the signs. Can you give us a little information about what's going to happen and what the process is and how?
Right. Obviously, there's a long process to get an individual sign, and I tell you what it is. There's a resolution introduced into the City Council. From there, it goes to the Public Improvements Commission to determine the location is available. There it goes to the City Clerk. After that, the Committee to Memorialize Veterans, who vote on it, and actually the Transportation Department erects the sign. Now, that seems like a long, drawn-out method, but when you think about it, it's you want to make sure that each sign has a special meaning, and that just someone doesn't say, hey, I'd like a sign for John Jones. He was a nice guy. Put one up. But the criteria is that each one of those signs in Boston is dedicated for a veteran who was killed in action.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the gold star on the sign is that indicator.
Yeah, my mother was a Gold Star mother.
Yeah?
And they used to go to the, what was that Veterans Club? It used to be in the old reliefs thing on Haymarket Square.
VFW had,
Right.
144 had a post there, and they moved to Hanover Street, and they just sold that building.
And the police station was right there, too.
Yeah, right on the Haymarket Square. That's when Haymarket Square was, there were all buildings there. It wasn't, afterwards when the redevelopment and everything, the government center and the West End, it sort of like got leveled out. But why do you think they brought this back up? I know I sent a letter into the Herald, and I'm wondering if that's what triggered it.
That's almost what it takes to get the interest peaked up for that. Usually a sign is not put up unless there's a specific request for it. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is, as I stated before, is that just so that there's no indiscriminate sign put up because someone thought it'd be a good idea. And after all these signs were knocked down in the West End, there was a minimal number, actually 7, request to place them in a different location because some of the streets that these signs were on didn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. So 7 of those were put up, and the others, there just was never any request for them. But now, as there was more interest, someone wants to look in like yourself. Right. It brings the subject to a head once again, and so after we're talking it over internally, the mayor thought it would be a good idea to honor all of the 20 veterans who were killed in action. And the way to do that was to put all of their names on one memorial, and we'll put them in a specific location.
One of them was a Civil War veteran. I didn't realize that.
Yes,
Sims.
I didn't realize that either,
Sims was a Civil War veteran that died. I didn't realize that till someone told me. Just strange. Where do you think it'll end up?
Where, the location? Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you, we already had suggested a place right near the new West End place, the new apartment that are put up. That's kind of symbolic of the West End people. There's a large area of sidewalk there, and there is a brick wall adjacent to the building. Mm-hmm. So we're looking to see if that is an acceptable site. Well, if it is, then we will talk things over with the Arts Commission, who has to rule on all of those perennial and perpetual signs. And that's the next step, and after that is the erection.
That's right. Yeah. That'll be some time. I know I'll be happy about it because it's, to me, like I said, with my brother died in Italy, up in the Po Valley in 1944, and
well, certainly you have a personal interest in it.
Personal interest, yeah. As a matter of fact, he was coming back off the line, and his buddy stepped on a landmine and took them both out. So, matter of fact, that was his third Purple Heart. He had 2 before that. So. But that was a war, everybody, the whole families got wiped out. So, it wasn't just my family that suffered. So I don't want to make it seem like, but there were tragic times. Now, it said something about a committee in the paper. Are they going to have people like former West Enders and everything involved in this, or is this just going to be like...
Well, no, it's kind of an internal committee. The policy advisor to the mayor was involved. One of the employees from the Neighborhood Services Department, a person from the Arts Commission, and myself.
Okay.
And so sometimes a limited number of people get a little bit more action than...
I agree with you. I have been running with committees like 10, 12 people, and
wind up with a camel, as they say.
Everybody wants to put their 2 cents in, and then what happens is some people, even after they decide it's no good, after you're gone for about 10 minutes, they bring it all back again. It just goes over and over and over again. So, but I would like some input from the former West Enders into this. So, if we could, I would really, appreciate that. That would be a nice thing. So
anyone is certainly welcome to send in comments and they'll all be considered, I'm sure.
So basically. And like I say, I want to congratulate the city for this. I think it's a fine thing they're doing, and I think it's something that should have been done way before. Okay, it should have been done under the Hines or Collins administration. But, that's even under Flynn.
It's never too late.
Yeah, even under Flynn. I'm sure Flynn would have done it if he had realized it was there, because Flynn was that kind of guy. But unfortunately, it's been a long time, and I think we're all West Enders, former West Enders, will be happy. I even think the West Enders that live here today, right, will find it a fine thing to do, because these people gave their lives.
But I was in the Navy. I served in the Mediterranean.
Oh, okay.
No fault of our own.
You fought the fish.
We go where they sent.
And
that's all. I would have liked to gone up north, but that's it.
But at the same time, during that era there, with the communists threatening us all over the world, it looked like the war was going to break out anywhere in the world. So that's why they were there, because
it looked like it was a world war. It looked like there was a world war coming, and I'm glad it didn't. It looked like that was fun. You were in Korea. You were in the actual fight.
I was in Korea. I joined when I was just 18 years old after high school. And I was in combat at 19 years old, and I stood in Korea for a year. I got shot at every day. We got shot at, either mortars, artillery, bullets, what have you. And we fired back, of course, and it was quite a thing. I have a picture here with the machine gun, and I was just young. And this is me. And I remember the Chinese were just shooting at me and another guy, and I said to the guy, I don't believe it. They're just shooting at both of us. It looks like I'll never see 20 years old. He goes, you joined, you jerk. In other words, he said something else, but that's what I said. You joined, you jerk. I go, yeah, I did. He goes, you stupid. And I said, we're about to get killed. And he called me all these names. But we didn't get killed. Everything turned out all right. There were some areas where there were bodies around us, just scared the heck out of you. Just wanted to live for another day.
Of course.
Yes.
That's proof positive you were young once.
Yes, I was young, yeah.
How about Joe Nello? He was a West Ender that was...
Yes, Joe Nello was a friend of mine from the West End. We went to school together, the Blackstone School in the West End of Boston. And he was in Korea ahead of me. And he was in when the Chinese came into the war, and all hell broke loose. Him and another guy, his friend Hershey, is his nickname. He's a Japanese-American guy, and he won the Medal of Honor. And Joe Anello won the Silver Star for holding back the Chinese while the other guys can get away. And then they got captured, and Joe escaped and got captured again. He was wounded. Hershey was wounded, and but they're both alive today. In fact, the Korean government invited them back to Korea. They're going back May 22nd of this year, 2005, and the Korean government's going to pick up all the in-house bill. And this is like 55 years later, or whatever it comes out to. That was back in 1950, 51, so it's quite a few years. And I'm sure they'd like to see the area. Well, they can't see the area where this action took place, but they'll be in Korea anyhow, in South Korea. And we still have a little piece of North Korea that we won, and of course the Chinese and North Koreans wanted it back, and with the negotiations they never got it back.
No, that was a tough time. I remember, I forgot who it was. I remember somebody from the West End went over there, and I guess they had just gotten off the boat or whatever, and they got killed. It was.
I think that was Jimmy Delmonico. I think that was.
It was somebody. I remember somebody. It wasn't. It was like almost. He just got there, and that was it. It was over for him. It's a tragic time. Like I say, in the Second World War, there was Second World War was everybody was dying.
Everybody.
They were against the Navy. Everybody was. Me myself, I was in the Coast Guard in peacetime, so I don't really have a lot to add to all of this. But what about your ship?
I volunteered in 1951.
Right.
I went in for 4 years. I was aboard the same ship for 4 years. They wouldn't let me off it because I was an ex-fisherman, and they wanted to keep me on there.
What was the name of your ship?
The ship was the Leary DDR 879. It was destroyer radar picket ship.
Oh, okay. Smaller, about 300 feet, right?
Yeah, well, I'd say it was about 380 feet.
Yeah.
With a crew of about 375 people, and good thing about a ship that size, you get to know everybody.
Right.
Well, we had friends that Jimmy knows too, that were on crack carriers, and you could never.
Well, this thing's
it was big, so.
Too many people.
I spent most of my time in the Mediterranean. So.
Visited
And your brother was with you.
And I had a brother on the
On the
ship
same
with me
ship.
also, because during conflicts, you could have your brothers aboard.
Right.
But when the Sullivans got lost, it was during wartime, they eliminated it.
Well, they also initiated that, Private Ryan, that movie Private Ryan.
Right.
Where they, if you were the only surviving brother, they would pull you out of combat.
Right.
So.
And there was one good thing about being in the service. I went to see my grandmother in Italy, which I never had the chance to see over here.
Right.
So I did. I benefit that way too.
Yeah, well, people don't realize that even if you're in the service during wartime, and you're not fighting, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going through stress.
Oh, there's a lot of stress.
Because everybody's the officers and everything. See, nowadays nobody goes in the service, so it's like people enlist like here and there, do whatever.
Today it's all volunteer. I don't know if what would happen if we were ever really in a real conflict. Who'd want to go to war?
But I'm glad that Mayor Menino and Boston is considering putting these names back up, the ones that lost their lives. Also, there's more names. On our street, we had the Napoli family that they had 5 brothers in the service, and one got killed, and they never had a chance to put his name up. He died.
What war was that?
That was the Second World War.
The gentleman you mentioned, his name will be on the World War II memorial in the Fenway area.
Yeah, there was. I spoke to his brother about maybe 3 months ago. I asked him to come down to Meadow Glen Mall because the guys down from the west end and the north end get together every Thursday at the Meadow Glen Mall about 10 o'clock in front of Dunkin' Donuts. And Frank Privatera, the lawyer, buys cannolis and pisellis and all kinds of goodies. But everybody buys their own coffee.
I'll follow you anywhere. Yeah, there's quite a few guys go up there. And, we had other people like Frank Levine. I tried to get Frank over here. Frank was over in Guam in the Air Force, and he was with the Clayman kid. The Clayman kid that got killed in the flight that disappeared over China. And I guess they eventually found his body and everything. But Frank was he was over in Guam with the Air Force. Then after a while he came back and he met some girl in Illinois when he was going through basic, and the girl asked him if he could sail. And the Charles, the judge, what is it, the boat club down in the Charles River. That was started for West End Kids by Joe Lee. Joe Lee started that thing. They built their own boats. Yeah, this is true. They built their own boats and everything, and did all this. So Frank's in Illinois, and the girl comes up to him and goes, "Do you know how to? Are you a sailor?" He says, "Yeah, I can sail." Come here. He gets back from the war, right? He gets a phone call. You know that boat that went over to Israel, the Exodus 46? Yeah. Frank was a crew member on it. So he got like a sort of a double dose, right? Guam and everything. And there's a lot of interesting stories. I think I've been remiss in that I should have went after, we did a lot of oral history tapings. We got them up in the West End Branch Library. We got about 75 hours of oral history taping. But maybe it would have been a good idea to take, war stories when the people were still alive,
Well,
and got all these stories. And we got a lot of political stuff about the early days, how they used to fight with each other and tear down the signs. Like even out here, sometimes I get involved in politics here, and I tell them all. I said, I remember in the old days. They said you had two crews out, one putting up signs, one tearing them down. That was a different era. Now everything has changed.
Yeah, during the Second World War, everybody was in the service. Everybody, the Navy, Coast Guard, Merchant Marines. Everybody.
That was one of the positive effects of the draft. Right. Every family was involved.
Everybody.
So that if anything was decided with the military, everybody had a little involvement with it. And that doesn't happen today in a volunteer army.
Yeah.
And, if you really look at it, there are people that they're calling up are National Guards and reservists, which by the very nature of who they are should be the last ones, not the first ones.
That's right. When I went in,
right, Ralph, about saying you don't know.
When I went in, there was four brothers of ours were in all at the same time. There's two of us in the Navy, one in the Air Force, and one in the Army. The last brother couldn't go in because he was too young. But if he was old enough, he would have volunteered also. But today you don't get that.
There's another thing you don't get. In the Second World War, the civilians were active. I mean, I remember the paper drives. I remember when I was a kid, the paper drives.
And the metal drives.
Yeah, and everything. And people volunteering for hospitals, and people volunteering, for all this stuff. You had all that kind of stuff going on because it was a total war, and you had to fight it totally, and everybody pitched in. I don't know if it was another total war, if people would pitch in like that. I wish they would, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I sometimes look at the way some of these people are.
You got to support the troops no matter what.
Exactly. There are just terrible things that happen in wartime.
Right.
There's no getting around that. And we'd like to think everything is, everybody follows the Geneva Convention, but...
Oh, no, especially on the other side. Look at the other side. I don't want our side to do... look at in the Second World War, a lot of things happened in the Second World War that people don't even realize happened. If you get into it, you'll find that on both sides.
Yes.
On both sides.
Yeah, the atrocities, sure.
Ralph, you have a book there, and you have some of the pictures.
Yeah, this is called The Helm.
Yeah.
And this is a book about our basic trading, which I took in Newport, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
In February of 1951. It was a 9-week course. And here's what I looked like then. It's quite a difference now.
Yeah.
And that was me in 1951. I was just 20 years old.
When I was in the Coast Guard, we had the same uniforms. The only difference was we had a shield.
And
it was the Coast Guard, right? You couldn't tell from...
And there's one of... His name is Joe Noe.
Yeah.
He's from the West End, and we did our boat camp together. We spent 9 weeks together doing boot camp.
Yeah.
And he's an old West Ender, too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
See.
Any more?
No, that's...
Okay, and what ports did you stay in? And what ports did you go to?
Well, we did all of Southern Europe, and we started from Sicily all the way up to Trieste, which at that time was international. It didn't belong to Italy, and it didn't belong to Yugoslavia.
That's right.
But then they made it all Italian now, see? But I went all the way from Sicily to Venice and all the way up to Trieste and Genoa, you name it, because I made 3 cruises over there, which after a while, we did volunteer for other duty, but they wouldn't send us there. But like I said,
You were an important part to hold back the communists, believe me.
well, I tell you, we even went to Beirut when I was in there, and believe me, it was such a beautiful city.
It was called the Switzerland of the East.
All white buildings, it was beautiful, and there was, and we
It's a
went
shame
there.
what happened there, too, yeah.
So, but that's, who knew?
Matter of fact, my brother's, I get his book, the 88th Division. I think I talked to you about this,
Right.
the Blue Devils
Blue
and the
Devils.
others. And they ended up in Trieste. That was